From lush to sus. Right, what gives? Let's talk about all the things that have transpired in order for this orchid to look the way she does, if she will survive, or if she is now in a quasi-rescue mode. I have to repot her, so I figured why not take the opportunity to break down what went on with this orchid and what is going on while I repot her. Besides, it is the first time I'm repotting an orchid that is potted up in pumice and self-watering. I mainly grow my orchids in Leca or lava rock in a self-watering setup or semi-hydroponics, but as I had a bag of pumice just collecting dust in my orchid stash area, I decided to pot some orchids up in pumice only to see how they do, and it is clear from the years I've had this orchid, she loves the pumice. However, I do not have any more pumice to bump her up with, so we will be adding Leca into the new pot in the hopes that that will do the trick as well. Welcome to the patio. It is so good to have you here. While the orchid is still in the pot, I'm going to do my best to remove all the sheaths that are dying back that I can reach easily because, yes, we can see she is already underway with new growths. This orchid has a tendency to grow more new growths than what you can already see, which find themselves beneath the deteriorating sheaths. So these sheaths, while not completely dried out, they are damp, and damp is not something I want to have anywhere near any potential new growths that may find themselves underneath them. My temperatures are clearly too cold for this orchid, which is evident in the continued browning of the leaves, which started back in 2024 when the sudden dry heat singed the leaves. Not because of being hit by direct sun, instead, the lush green leaves started to desiccate because of the hot, dry air, possibly less than 30% on a single day, and that will do the damage, and then the deterioration proceeds from there. Moving her indoors with an extremely humid and dark fall, that did not help with the energy levels either for her to maintain most of the existing leaves. So we went from super dry with high light and loads of airflow to super humid with no light and no airflow. That is a dramatic change in conditions which, well, even as a human, is a shock to the system. In the meantime, many leaves were lost as a result as well, but thankfully I did not have to deal with any fungi. That is a blessing, and I count the small blessings as huge when it comes to adverse conditions that I'm not able to do anything about. Basically, the orchids that have to come inside, and myself, we ride out the winter months anxiously and stressed out to the hilt together. Teamwork makes the dream work, they say. Well, I like to put a little spin on that and say, teamwork makes the nightmares work. My orchids and I go through the same difficulties throughout the winter months in the hopes of better winters ahead one day. Or not, but anyway, we live in hope and we grow in hope. So I'm going to ask you to help us out and please give this video a thumbs up before we get into unpotting this orchid. I would really appreciate that support, as well as if you would please subscribe to the channel and maybe share the video out for additional help to get more eyeballs onto my channel. I cannot thank you enough, but saying thank you so much will hopefully get my point across as well. I can feel that this orchid is pot bound, and because the sheaths are so tough and stringy, I preferred to remove them while the orchid was solid in the pot and not while she was vulnerable once out of the pot, because I'm really wanting to protect the already larger new growths. The brown pseudobulb is not concerning at all. It happens. My conditions may or may not have played a part in its decline, but it is one of the oldest bulbs this orchid came with, so I'm grateful that it was there to sustain something for the new growths to draw from, and that it was only a single bulb that has deteriorated. Also, speaking of pot bound, even the mask was stuck to the pot. I had to position the pot between my feet to lift the pot out of the mask. Okay, right. Here we go. My biggest question was, will the coarse pumice stick to the fine roots and cause damage the way lava rock does? And the answer is, surprisingly no. Meanwhile, the pumice that fell off easily was mainly attached to dead roots, but the velamen of those roots did not stick to that pumice either. I find that super interesting, and it's a point of reference for the future in case I can one day source pumice here locally and proceed with other orchids and pumice. Anyway, what I'm going to do is ensure that all that pumice that is falling off will go back into the new pot. And while there are plenty of brown roots in the pot, not all of them are dead. Age will make any root go brown, plus, seaweed will stain a viable root and make it look like it's not viable anymore. But anyway, all of that being said, a lot of them are still viable. I don't even have to get into that root ball, because if the roots were not viable, the pseudobulbs would be telling us that the orchid is not hydrating. They would be showing signs of getting shriveled. So what we're going to do here is just up-pot her. Seeing as this is her first repot since I got her, an up-pot is just fine. Also, if I go in too aggressively to clean out this root system, like take it apart, this time of year, then I am only asking for trouble for my orchid. We can buy ourselves another couple of years before we do the big cleanup, which will also include dividing this orchid, because clearly she's going to have some Cymbidium vibes from here on in. There'll be no leaves in the center, and everything is happening around the outer perimeter, much like the haircut of a monk. It's not exactly aesthetically pleasing, it's not the look that I like in an orchid, but in this case, it is what it is. I could potentially already divide her by now. She has enough structures for 2 healthy divisions, but that's not the plan, not this time around. Alright, new pot, let's go. Yeah, that is not going to give us another 2 years at a minimum, which is what I'm looking for, so I shall go and rummage around in my little casita for a bigger pot and mask. Well, if I can keep her in this pot for 3 years, that's going to make using this pot worthwhile. I had actually allocated this set for another orchid, but right now needs must. My plan is to use small Leca to fill in the blanks, because small Leca will be more compatible with the pumice than large Leca would be. And the size of the pot where the roots will find themselves, the wicking action of small Leca is much more effective than large Leca is. With fine roots and the size of the pot, we need this to happen. The wicking has to be uninterrupted without any delays between the reservoir and the roots. For future reference, I want to make sure that I remember that there is mainly pumice in this pot. Who knows what the years ahead will bring? I may totally forget this combo. So I'm going to have pumice at the top as a visual reminder. I did not wash my pumice prior to putting it back in the pot. I wanted to avoid my high TDS mains water to be absorbed into this pumice, which was previously only and ever in contact with RO water. Now, the final little detail is to ensure that the new roots that will come out from underneath these somewhat suspended new growths will grow into the media, but starting with being exposed. So I'm creating hollows underneath the rhizomes of these new growths, which I can then fill with Leca at a later stage, once the new roots have grown long enough. This should ensure that I do not have any root tips drying out. I'm expecting new roots from this orchid within approximately 6 weeks, once she can have the light she needs to get her energy levels up and running efficiently again. Hey, that syncs with how I feel at the moment. Low light, low energy levels. Told you that my orchids and I are in sync. And with that, job done. Hang in there, Marielle, hang in there. We have 6 weeks to go before you can go outside for the glam camping season of 2025. And if by chance you would be so kind, please bless us with some more spikes and beautiful blooms. Thank you so very much for watching and being here at the end of the video. I appreciate that additional support as well. Wishing you a wonderful day, on the condition though, please, that you stay safe. Take care. Bye.